Welcome to Spiritual Journeys. I am Renee Marie. Today's segment will be about Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King, First Lady of the Civil Rights Movement. Coretta was born April 27th, 1927 in Alabama, the third of four children of Obadiah and Bernice McMurray Scott. She was born at home with her paternal great-grandmother Delia Scott, a former slave, as the midwife. Her maternal grandparents were Molly and Martin Van Buren McMurray, who were both of African American and Irish descent. Martin was a self-taught reader and inspired Coretta's passion for education. Coretta's paternal grandparents were Cora McLaughlin and Jefferson F. Scott. At age 10, Coretta worked to increase the family's income. The Scott family had owned a farm since the American Civil War, but were not wealthy. Coretta was a tomboy during her childhood because she could climb trees and wrestle boys. Her brother, Obadiah, thought she, quote, always tried to excel in everything she did, end unquote. Her sister, Edith, thought her personality was like that of her grandma Cora, after whom she was named. Coretta's parents wanted all of their children to be educated. Their children went to a one-room elementary school 5 miles from their home and were later bused to Lincoln Normal School 9 miles from their home. Coretta was the leading soprano for the school senior chorus, directed a chorus at her church, played trumpet and piano, and participated in school musicals. Coretta graduated valedictorian from Lincoln Normal School in 1945. She was accepted to Antioch College and studied music and became politically active. She joined the Antioch chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and the Race Relations and Civil Liberties Committees. Coretta received a BA in music and education from Antioch College and then won a scholarship to the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston and earned a degree in violin and voice. She met Martin Luthor King Jr. Coretta showed little interest at first, but eventually agreed to the meeting. When they met, Martin told her that she had all the qualities he was looking for in a wife, and 2 weeks after meeting Coretta, Martin wrote to his mother that he had met his wife, and in August, Coretta met Martin's parents, Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. Coretta and Martin Luther King Jr. were married on June 18, 1953, on the lawn of her mother's house. The ceremony was performed by Martin Luther King Sr. Coretta had the vow to obey her husband removed from the ceremony, which was unusual for the time. She moved with Martin to Montgomery, Alabama in September 1954, where he had accepted an invitation to be the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Coretta became a member of the choir, taught Sunday school, and participated in the Baptist Training Union and Missionary Society. Martin and Coretta's first child of 4, Yolanda, was born on November 17, 1955. When Martin became involved in the Montgomery bus boycott, Coretta received threats directed towards him, even though Martin and Coretta both believed in non-violent protests. 2 days after the interrogation of Montgomery's bus service on December 23, 1955, a bullet passed through the front door of their home while they were asleep. They were not harmed. On September 3rd, 1958, Coretta accompanied Martin and Ralph Abernathy to the hearing of Edward Davis. Martin was entering the courtroom when he was stopped by police and arrested for loitering and failing to obey an officer. Martin was released on a $100 bond. A few weeks later, Coretta learned that Martin had been critically stabbed by a woman who suffered from delusions and paranoia while signing copies of his book, Stride Towards Freedom, on September 20th, 1958. Coretta rushed to see her husband and stayed with him for the remainder of his time in the hospital recovering. On January 30th, 1956, Coretta and her friend Mary Lucy heard a brick hitting the front porch. Then an explosion caused the house to rock and filled the room with smoke and shattered glass. Coretta called Martin, who immediately returned home. Finding everyone unharmed, he went outside to an angry crowd of his supporters who had brought guns to calm them. Between 1962 and 1968, Coretta was involved in numerous women's strikes for peace conferences and rallies. On March 26, 1965, during one of these rallies, Coretta's father joined her and Martin. Her father called it, quote, the greatest day in the whole history of America, and unquote, after witnessing chanting for Martin by both Caucasians and African Americans. On April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed in Memphis, Tennessee. 2 days after Martin's death, Coretta spoke at Ebenezer Baptist Church. She said that her husband told their children, quote, if a man had nothing that was worth dying for, then he was not fit to live, and unquote. On April 8th, 1968, Coretta and her children headed a march with sanitation workers that Martin had planned to carry out before his death. At the end of the first funeral service on April 9th, 1968, Coretta led her children and mourners in a 3-mile march from the church to Morehouse College, her late husband's alma mater, for his second funeral service. Coretta took Martin's place at a peace rally in New York. Shortly after, Coretta decided to take Martin's place as leader of the civil rights movement. For the next 38 years, Coretta continued fighting for women's and LGBT rights, economic issues, world peace, and various other causes. Coretta also founded the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change in Atlanta, and served as the center's president and CEO from its inception till she passed the leadership to son Dexter Scott King. Coretta was the force behind the success in 1986 when Martin Luther King Jr. Day was made a federal holiday on the third Monday of January each year, which is around Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday on January 15th. Coretta also became a vegan in 1995 because of her son Dexter's vegetarianism. Coretta believed that promoting animal rights was the next logical extension of Martin Luther King Jr.'s philosophy of non-violence. In April 2005, Coretta was diagnosed with a heart condition. On August 16, she was hospitalized after suffering a stroke and a mild heart attack. She was released from Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta on September 22nd after regaining some of her speech. On January 14, 2006, Coretta made her last public appearance and then died on January 30th, 2006, at the Rehabilitation Center in Rosarito Beach, Mexico, in the Oasis Hospital from respiratory failure due to complications from ovarian cancer. Coretta's funeral at the New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, was held on February 7, 2006. She was temporarily laid in a mausoleum on the grounds of the King Center. On November 20th, 2006, the new mausoleum containing the bodies of the kings at the King Center was unveiled in front of friends and families. The inscription on her crypt is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. And now abide faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. In 2007, the Coretta Scott King Young Women's Leadership Academy was opened in Atlanta, Georgia. She was inducted into the Alabama's Women Hall of Fame in 2009 and was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2011. Coretta received honorary doctorates from over 60 colleges and universities, authored 3 books and a nationally syndicated newspaper column, served on and helped found dozens of organizations, and met with many great spiritual leaders throughout her life. For more information about this great woman, visit thekingcenter.org. And thank you for watching Spiritual Journeys.